Today we're diving deep into a thought-provoking critique by Moshe Granot on Israel Finkelstein's The Bible Unearthed, Archaeology's new vision of ancient Israel and the origin of its sacred texts. Granot, known for his skepticism, takes a firm stance against Finkelstein and Silberman's assertions. They argue that much of the biblical narrative, including the stories of the Patriarchs and the Exodus, were composed during the reign of Josiah and refined up to Nehemiah's time. This claim, which suggests a self-persuaded belief in the absence of archaeological evidence to back the historical accuracy of the Bible, is something Granot challenges fiercely. He questions the logic behind the author's reliance on what he sees as scant evidence to dismiss the biblical account as mere fiction. Granot finds it absurd to suggest that the absence of archaeological evidence is itself evidence. He draws parallels with the Mongol Empire, pointing out that the lack of architectural remains in Mongolia doesn't diminish its historical significance, thereby questioning the methodology applied by Finkelstein and Silberman. Granot also tackles the claim that Jerusalem and Hebron, due to the complexities of excavating these religiously significant sites, could not have been the bustling cities described in biblical texts. He argues against the portrayal of the United Kingdom of Israel as a figment of religious imagination from Josiah's time, defending the biblical narrative's historical plausibility. Moreover, Granot criticizes the authors for overlooking the credible stories within the books of Samuel, which contradict their hypothesis. He underscores that archaeology should not replace the story, but rather aid in confirming or denying its credibility. Granot's critique culminates in defending the rich narrative of the Bible, emphasizing its reliability and the depth it offers to understanding ancient Israel's history. Now, let's unpack a particularly original claim made in the book. The idea that the Deuteronomist, or the authors of Deuteronomy, essentially created the stories found in the book of Samuel to reflect the period and reforms of King Josiah. This assertion raises several questions about the biblical narratives, especially the roles and actions attributed to key figures like Samuel, David, and others, which seem to defy the conventions and laws outlined elsewhere in the biblical text. For instance, why would the Deuteronomist allow Samuel from the tribe of Ephraim, and not a priest or Levite, to sleep next to the Ark of God in Shiloh? This is a privilege traditionally reserved for the high priest once a year, and certainly not in Shiloh but in Jerusalem, the place that the Lord will choose. And yet Samuel is there receiving divine inspiration, a process researchers often refer to as incubation. Moving on to King David, he's depicted as wearing a linen ephod and offering sacrifices, roles typically reserved for priests. His sons too are described as serving in priestly capacities, along with Ira the Jairite, presumably from the tribe of Manasseh. This blurring of boundaries between royal and priestly functions is puzzling if we consider the strict delineations usually observed in these ancient texts. Moreover, the narrative permits David to marry women from backgrounds and lineages that would have been controversial, if not outright forbidden, according to the laws laid out in Deuteronomy. From taking another man's wife Bathsheba and establishing her son as his heir, to marrying Maacah, the daughter of the king of Geshur, David's marital alliances cross established boundaries and challenge the expected norms of his time. Even more striking is the portrayal of David's household, which includes teraphim, religious icons that King Josiah is known to have eradicated in his reforms. The narrative also doesn't shy away from showing David's recognition of gods outside of Israel, an acknowledgement that would seem out of place for a monotheistic king. The critique doesn't stop there. It also questions why the Deuteronomist would depict David in ways that directly violate the laws and principles outlined in Deuteronomy. From the handling of Michal, his wife, to the manner in which he engages with the Philistines and Moabites, traditional enemies of Israel. But perhaps the most poignant critique is on the narrative choice to depict David's later years, his family dynamics, and the political intrigue surrounding his succession in ways that seem to humanize him, making him a complex character rather than a paragon of virtue. This nuanced portrayal raises questions about the intention behind these stories and the lessons they were meant to convey to their audience. Let's continue by addressing a provocative question. If Saul's kingdom, as well as those of David and Solomon, were indeed as small, sparsely populated, and insignificant as some claim, how do we explain the dramatic events that took place at Mount Gilboa, or the heartfelt actions of the men of Jabesh Gilead who risked everything to honor Saul and his sons after their death? This narrative doesn't just tell us about the respect and loyalty Saul commanded, it also hints at a much larger and more connected kingdom than what some modern interpretations suggest. Historically, Saul is credited with saving the people of Jabesh-Gilead from Nahash the Ammonite, and his battles with the Philistines were far from fictional. These stories, deeply embedded within the fabric of the biblical narrative, highlight a sense of unity and identity that stretched from Dan to Beersheba. This wasn't a loosely tied group of tribes, but a unified people with a shared history and destiny. Digging deeper into the scripture, we find mentions of specific places and events that cover a wide geographical area, from the temple at Shiloh in Ephraim across to the southern Golan's Helam, to Lodabar in Gilead, and Abel-Beth-Makkah in Naphtali. This isn't just about marking territories, it's about understanding the complex social and political landscape these figures navigated and shaped. One of the most compelling arguments against the notion of a small and insignificant kingdom comes from the very structure of the military and bureaucracy under these kings. The existence of a foreign legion, or a mercenary army, under Saul, David, and Solomon speaks to the complexity and extent of their rule. These weren't just bands of local warriors but organized military forces that included foreigners, a strategy for maintaining power and control that suggests a significant realm. Moreover, the administrative structure, as indicated by the documentation and correspondence managed by scribes for King David, shows a level of literacy and governance sophistication that contradicts claims of an insignificant kingdom. The mention of regions and cities, rather than just tribes, in Solomon's administrative divisions further underlines the breadth of his rule, extending over a vast territory that was far from insignificant. Lastly, let's address the portrayal of Jerusalem during the reigns of David and Solomon. Far from being a small village, Jerusalem emerges from the biblical narrative as a bustling, vibrant city, a religious and political hub that attracted people from across the region. This contradicts the claim of Jerusalem being inconsequential during their reigns. In wrapping up, the critique of the Bible Unearthed raises valid points about the depth and complexity of the biblical narrative, challenging us to reconsider our understanding of these ancient kingdoms. The evidence within the biblical texts themselves, supported by references to geographical locations, military and administrative practices, and the socio-political dynamics of the time, paints a picture of significant, interconnected, and influential kingdoms under Saul, David, and Solomon. The debate over the historical accuracy of these narratives is far from over, but one thing is clear. The stories of these ancient kings, their battles, their governance, and their legacy continue to captivate and challenge us, offering a window into a world that, despite the passage of centuries, remains as intriguing and complex as ever. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history and scripture. If you enjoyed this exploration and want to dive deeper into the mysteries of the past, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and as always, keep seeking the truths that history holds.